last week was Act 1, Part 1. Thank you. And tonight we're going to talk about Act 2, Part 2. And again, this is our second webinar, so what did I say? Act 2, Part 1, pardon me. And what we'd like you to do is to, hopefully this week you've worked on finding a dream for the character that you may want to write about. And I'd like you to sort of bring that to mind. I'm going to also tell you that if you want to find out more information about this, if you like the style of working, you can go and look at our website, which is screenwritermagic.com. That's screenwritermagic.com. And if you want to contact us for any reason, a couple of people wanted to talk to me last time because I'm also a coach, so if you want to give us a call, you may, and the number here is 212-600-1115. That's 212-600-1115. So let's begin. And last week I did the classic thing of holding this book up upside down, which I found very amusing. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And I'm going to hope that I'm going to now hold the book up properly. So I'm feeling pretty happy now. I've got to get it in the camera. This is kind of fun. I hope you don't mind that I can't take this perfection thing too seriously. And I don't want you, when you're writing a first draft, to do it either. Now, just in case you're having problems looking at the web, we're looking at page 1 of the book. And on that page is the 4 Magic Questions Screenwriting breakdown of the film Witness. And we're using Witness as our model film because it's not quite 120 minutes long, but basically that's the model that's used to talk about the 3-act structure, which I know that all of you are familiar with at this point. But what we do in the 4 Magic Questions, and again, this is a basic screenwriting class, and part of the reason I'm excited about giving it is that I think I found, and I'm going to be immodest here and say I think I found a much more useful and efficient way to work on a screenplay. And we do this by taking our model film, and we acknowledge that the traditional way of looking at film structure is that we have a ratio of 30, 60, 30, again using our model number. And that's, the first and the third act are half as long as the long Act 2. And not surprisingly, most writers struggle horribly with Act 2. And as a writer myself, I have struggled very hard with Act 2. And what I realized at a certain moment was that if we looked at Act 2 as having 2 parts of equal length, so that our movie becomes not a 30, 60, 30, but 4 30-minute or 30-page sections, it became more manageable. And then, as I write my book, because I'm the product of a philosophy professor and a lawyer, and questions are the way that I have always learned everything, I thought, well, if I can figure out what question to ask for each of these act sections, it will be fairly methodically easy for me to get an answer, and in fact it was. So I'm hoping that for you who are watching this, who are thinking about writing a screenplay, that you will try this way first, because you will find that by understanding your structure both in a methodical and also an emotional way, the dance between plot and character, which often shuts down screenplays because you have a plot and you're desperately trying to get your characters to fit in the plot, will go away, and you will create an organic structure which will allow you to write a first draft that is very easy and juicy, and you can rewrite it with a certain amount of ease. And that's a big promise, but this is a repeatable experiment that's worked, and I am so excited to share this with you. If I could stand up and stay in the camera, I wouldn't jump up and down. So let's just go forward. Now, hopefully you found page 1, and for those of you who can't use the web camera stuff, Act 1 asks, what is the main character's dream? And last week we talked about how the goal when you're creating a screenplay is to create a character who has a clear want that we can understand. And our sample film that we're using is the film Witness. And again, as I always say, my mother said, why are you using this film? It is not the greatest film ever made. It's no Casablanca. And I said, because the reversals in the story are perfect for understanding how to use the questions. And also, it's really quite a fabulous film because it is so driven by the character's want, and the events that happen in Act 2 are so surprising. And what we need is an Act 2 that is not only emotionally logical and interesting, we need one that is surprising, because we like to have the sense that we know what's going to happen, so we're not lost, but we also like to be surprised. And surprise is quite a difficult thing to do. So I know it's a funny idea that surprise can be created in a methodical way, but part of what I've discovered teaching for all these years is that things like inspiration and talent can be summoned if the writer is above all things calm. And we can all admit that we're calm if we know what we're doing, and we're all not calm if we don't know what we're doing. So the idea that this is absolutely a simple, methodical way of working. Again, the muse strikes and you get flashes of genius because you just do, but with the fact that you're available, and many writers have said that their idea of what writers really have to do is show up, so that whatever inspiration comes through them can come through because someone's at the keyboard or holding a pen. So don't worry about this too much. The surprising and interesting material happen in a very organic way. So Act 1 asks, what is the main character's dream? Now, as we discussed last week, and I want to reprise, one of the fun things about working with the four magic questions is that we can remove a tremendous amount of our stress of creation, because one of the things that the method allows is that if you know Act 1, we can infer Act 3. So Act 1, once again, I'm going to just say the questions in case people can't see it, asks, what is the main character's dream? Now, Act 3 asks, very methodically, what is the resolution of the character's dream, or does the character find a new dream? And part of what I'm excited about with the four magic questions is that, as I say often, the world has changed and people are having a very different experience of being alive than they did even 2 years ago. And so using these four magic questions allows us to construct a movie that is really, very familiar in its structure and yet has a very different feel to it. A movie that we talk about a lot that I like is a movie called Garden State. And what I have to say about Garden State is that Garden State is a movie that you love or you hate. It's not necessarily an immortal masterpiece, but I love it, and I like it so much that when I coach, I work with novelists as well as screenwriters. And I had a writer, actually a novelist, who was working on a manuscript that he hadn't, he almost nailed it, but he hadn't been able to sell it, and he came back to me, as people do, after he'd sort of gotten stuck, and we looked at the manuscript, and I tried to explain to him what I thought were some of the problems, and it was sort of, he was very resistant. He thought I was criticizing his work, which I wasn't. And I said, look, let's do this. Why don't we table our discussion, and why don't you go watch Garden State, and we'll discuss it next week in our weekly coaching session, and we'll see, what you think of that movie, and that will help me explain what I mean better. So I call him the next week, and he goes, oh, God, that is the worst movie I have ever seen. The hero is passive. Act 2 is very twisty, and I couldn't, I wasn't sure all the time where it was coming from. And Act 3 had nothing to do with part 1. And I kind of went, well, that's exactly what's wrong with your book.